So, if you guys are unaware, Wizards of the Coast has been one of those companies that has been going downhill for the last few years. Because honestly, the entire company has been taken over by some sort of weird woke mind virus. Like, I hate using stuff like that, but I have to use it because it's the simplest way to explain the insanity that's going on right now in a company like Wizards of the Coast. And apparently, they just recently had a discussion about Dungeons and Dragons because Dungeons and Dragons is seeing some sort of a popular resurgence in the media because it's always been one of those IPs that, yeah, it's been popular, but it hasn't been mainstream popular like Marvel, for example, right? When they came out with the MCU. Dungeons and Dragons has been popular, but kind of still has always been that nerdy thing, like the thing that people do when they get in groups together with their nerd friends, kind of a thing. Like it's not mainstream popular, but there is a resurgence happening with this certain IP, and now apparently they just came out with an open game license agreement for Dungeons and Dragons that reportedly forbids bigoted and discriminatory content on new and old products. I'm telling you guys, Wizards of the Coast is just completely losing their mind. So let's get into this article, guys. This one comes from some good old Bounding into Comics, and it says leaked open game license agreement for Dungeons and Dragons reportedly forbids bigoted and discriminatory content on new and old products. A leaked new open game license for Wizards of the Coast Dungeons and Dragons forbids licensees from publishing any content deemed bigoted or discriminatory. Now, what exactly is deemed bigoted or discriminatory? I wonder. Like, what does that mean, right? Like, it's at the eye of the beholder. It's one of those things where if the person feels at the time that it's bigoted, then it is. You know what I'm saying? And then later down the line, if it's deemed not bigoted anymore by a different person, then it's not. So it's one of those things that doesn't actually have a meaning because it's fake. It's made up. It's like if we feel like it is at the time, then it is. The OGL allowed others to utilize some aspects of Dungeons and Dragons in their own tabletop games, physical or digital. It allows others to use the rules, races, creatures, settings, and more royalty free. Paizo's Pathfinder is an example of this, though published by Wizards of the Coast. In another case, Solasta, Crown of the Magister, an RPG video game by Tactical Adventures, uses the OGL's system reference document to use Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rules. SRD is also utilized in player-published homebrew campaigns and rules. The report comes via Gizmodo, citing a leaked draft of the OGL version 1.1 obtained by a non-Wizard of the Coast developer dated mid-December. It states that the 1.0 version is no longer an authorized license agreement, and all new content must abide by the 1.1 terms. This means all content, new and even old, will need to be reported to Wizards of the Coast and comply. No matter what commercial tier you are in or how much money you believe your product will make, you must register with us any new licensed work you intend to offer for sale, including a description of the licensed work, Wizards of the Coast states. So this is basically them saying, okay, you want to use our IP? Well, we're woke now. So if you're not going to bend the knee, then you can't have it anymore. That's essentially what they're doing. They're forcing everybody who has had a license prior to bend the knee in order to keep their license with the new terms. That's what they're doing. And you know what? I hope they sing for this. I really do, because this is what happens when a company tries to overstep. You have companies try to overstep all the time, and they almost always end up falling and burning to the ground because of it. So I hope that Wizards of the Coast is the exact same scenario, and I hope their company burns for this nonsense because they're being stupid. It says, we'll also ask you for your contact information on where you intend to publish the licensed work, and its price, amongst other things. Previously, creators didn't need to seek Wizards of the Coast approval. Gizmodo theorizes smaller creators will have the most hindrance, especially when multiple platforms and works are concerned. One of the new terms is that Wizards of the Coast can terminate agreements with third parties using the OGL to publish material that is blatantly racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, bigoted, or otherwise discriminatory, yet the creator must also make clear what is their content from Wizards of the Coast licensed content within the created works. This is such a joke. This is such a joke. Like, who is going to want to actually follow through and make something with this IP anymore? You're basically saying that you're going to stifle all forms of creativity because if somebody wants to get butthurt about something and take something completely out of context and get offended, which happens all the time, the softer your company is, the more frequent offense is going to happen. Like you foster an environment where everybody wants to be soft, so of course you're going to get offended more and more. And what's going to happen is you're going to get offended so much that it's going to leave almost no content that's going to be able to be made for your IP. So, I mean, what are you really trying to do here? I really wonder who's in charge of Wizards of the Coast at this point that's making all these insane decisions that are happening lately. It says, likewise, the mention of perpetual worldwide non-exclusive license from OGL 1.0 is gone, and in its place, Wizards of the Coast can modify or terminate this agreement for any reason whatsoever, provided we give 30 days notice. Instead, it's Wizards of the Coast that gain non-exclusive, perpetual, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license to use that content for any purpose. This applies to any licensees create, commercial or non-commercial. The leaked document has also been somewhat legitimized. Later, the OGL 1.1 states those making over $750,000 a year must pay Wizard of the Coast 25% of the excess, but only 20% if funded via Kickstarter. Wizard of the Coast preferred crowdfunding platform, a more custom and mutually beneficial licensing arrangement for those who have achieved great success, was also mentioned. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of this doesn't just have to do with the whole wokeness aspect. It also has to do that they're trying to overly monetize Dungeons and Dragons now. Dungeons and Dragons was one of those IPs that wasn't super monetized before compared to the Wizards of the Coast other IPs. Like, it just wasn't. And now they're trying to overly milk Dungeons and Dragons for some odd reason. Kickstarter's director of games, John Ritter, addressed the matter on Twitter. Kickstarter was contacted after Wizards of the Coast decided to make OGL changes, Ritter reveals, so we felt the best move was to advocate for creators, which we did, managed to get lower percent plus being more discussed, no hidden benefits, no financial kickbacks for KS, this is their license, not ours, obviously. Since 2020, some had tried to pin claims of racism against Dungeons and Dragons. This began with op-eds from hobby journalists claiming orcs and their inherently evil nature were negative stereotypes of black people. Now, the funny thing is, these journalists, I gotta laugh. These journalists, right, they want to come out and compare orcs to black people because I see it all the time. I mean, they literally do this. They have to be some of the most racist people in the entire world. The fact that you saw an orc, right? The fact that you saw an orc and immediately thought of black people goes to show exactly where your head is at. It really goes to show how racist you are in your mind, and you're trying to virtue signal to deflect from your actual racism that people can call you out on. If you look at an orc, and if you look at this and you think black people, you're fucked. You're completely fucked. Like, you are super incredibly racist, and you should really check yourself. It says principal rules designer Jeremy Crawford confirmed 2 months later that recent changes removing orcs' evil alignment and intelligence penalty reflect where our hearts are and indicate where we're heading. Wizards of the Coast, you're racist, man. You're racist as hell. If you literally changed orcs, the intelligence factor and the evil alignment factor for orcs simply because you thought it was downplaying black people, you need help. You really need help. A lot of the people who work for you need help. I don't know who works there that thinks like this, but they need help if they look at an orc and see a black person. It says, since then, we've seen sensitivity readers reviewing campaigns, trigger warnings, begging for feedback from fans who may be underrepresented historically, removing races for lineages, entirely removing negative traits from orcs and kobolds, and adding a wheelchair-accessible dungeon. Like, what? You have to sigh after a certain point because it's like, wow. Like, these people realize this is fantasy, right? Like, this is supposed to be made up. It's not supposed to reflect the world that we live in. I don't know why you keep thinking that this fantasy world needs to reflect the world that we live in, but apparently you're obsessed with this. So wheelchair people can only play wheelchair characters or wheelchair accessible dungeons. That's the only thing they could do. Otherwise, they can't enjoy Dungeons and Dragons. It's just like, it's impossible. 2021 had the removal of problematic lore, oh boy, deemed to be offensive stereotypes such as role-playing racists who engage in slavery, supremacism, blindly following powerful or charismatic leaders, ritual sacrifice, and cannibalism. Paizo also announced that they would remove any depiction of slavery from Pathfinder. I'm so done. I'm done with this, guys. Honestly, I am. I can't take Wizards of the Coast anymore. They belong in the shithole, and I hope that their company burns completely because honestly it's ridiculous. Like, the fact that they're making all these changes and companies are following suit just goes to show where these people really think about minorities. You know what I mean? They really think this way, and the people who are making these decisions, don't get me wrong, they're not minorities. They are glistening white. I promise you. Everyone who's making these decisions are 100% glistening white liberals. I promise. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought of today's story, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.